In this video, we're going to talk about discussion forums, which are an important tool for student interaction and engagement in Moodle. Discussion forums allow for threaded, asynchronous class discussions that are usually text-based.
This is a quick example of a discussion forum in Moodle, and there are many different forum types. We can go over those and we can also help you choose the one that's right for your goals. But generally, you'll see that the instructor initiates the conversation with a leading post where you'll also want to include some good questions for students and then whatever expectations you have. So for example, if there's a due date, how that forum's being graded, and then whether you want students to reply to each other and what sorts of questions or what sorts of dialogue you want students to have with one another. So you can see that you can embed video in a forum post. You could also include images, and so can students in a forum post. You can have hyperlinks. You can even include your own audio and video that records you on your webcam or records audio from your computer's microphone directly in a forum post. And then you'll note that these discussions are threaded. So my post is right here, and then the person who has replied to me shows just a little bit indented. And you can keep replying, and then it will continue to indent to show that threaded discussion.
So why would you use a discussion forum? If student interaction is important in your face-to-face class, then you really want to use discussion forums in an online environment. They let students interact with one another and then also let students interact with you. It's also a very good way to assess student understanding of a concept. This is usually formative assessment, so you're making sure that students have completed a reading and have understood the major concepts, or asking students to engage with and talk about some real-world problems. Discussion forums allow you to give feedback to students that is visible to all students. So this is obviously a little bit different than what you would do if you were grading an assignment and giving private feedback to students. But this is a great way to identify some misconceptions that many students might have and correct them in a way that all students can see and learn from. Students can also provide feedback to each other in a forum, so if you do peer review or would like students to look at each other's videos or read each other's essay or share ideas about a project they're working on, discussion forums are a great tool to facilitate that. And finally, many people use discussion forums to create a very low stakes environment, so totally ungraded, where students can ask questions about the course, can share any information with each other, such as study tips or resources that they've found helpful. So it's nice to set up a discussion forum that's totally ungraded and just allows students to connect with one another. I'll briefly talk about types of discussion forums that you'll find in Moodle. So we usually see faculty using three main types. The first is a standard forum for general use. And this is actually the default forum type. So if you didn't change it, this is what you would get. You have the instructor prompt up here at the top, and then students add their own discussion, and you'll see that each student response is on a different page. So with this forum type, students would need to click into someone's post in order to see it. A single simple discussion happens to be my favorite discussion type. This is where all of the posts are on one page. So this is what I showed you in the very beginning, where the instructor post is up at the top and then students are responding and also can reply to each other. And it's all on that one page, so there isn't any extra clicking. A Q&A forum is a special forum type where students must post their own reply before they can see their classmates' posts. In this type of forum, an instructor must create an actual post in the forum, so not just using the forum description. And this can be great if you really want to ask students to think independently, or if you're asking a question that has a definite answer, but it might be a difficult answer to get to, and you want students to try that out for themselves first before they see what their classmates have done. Asking good questions in discussion forums is so important because this will really impact the quality of the responses that you get from students. I know this seems obvious, but ask questions that you care about and that you know your students will care about. Think about course concepts and how they relate to real-world situations Ask students to propose solutions for real-world problems, and really think about what is most essential to help students work toward those outcomes in your course. You want your questions to be open-ended to encourage critical thinking skills. So questions such as why, how might, suppose, justify. So for example, a question such as what is the capital of Massachusetts? This is not a good discussion forum question because it has one answer. So there really isn't much to talk about. Give context to your students. So model the responses you want to see. If you write a 1 or 2 sentence discussion forum prompt, you're probably not going to get replies that are much more than 1 or 2 sentences. If you're asking students to reply or discuss a reading that they've done in the class or a video, put the link to that reading or video right there in your own prompt and quote from that reading or video. But really make sure that you're modeling what you want to see from your students. Ask several questions and let students choose which ones they will answer. It's always good to give students choice, and sometimes having a few questions can really help inspire more substantial responses and also allow students to really think about what's meaningful for them. Of course, if you have a question that you want to make sure that all students respond to, tell them that in your instructions. And ask students to ask questions of each other. It's really important to have students reply to one another in order to keep interaction going. And sometimes asking them to ask each other questions is a good way to get that conversation really flowing because students like to read the questions that their classmates are asking and like to respond to them. Finally, consider using smaller groups. So if you have a class of even 20 students, sometimes that can get overwhelming in one discussion forum, but you can use the groups feature in Moodle to break students up into smaller discussion groups, and then they're having a conversation with maybe 4 of their classmates. So think about how you could use smaller groups when you might be worried that your questions are not enough to sort of go on for 20 student responses. Think about smaller groups because then those smaller groups can all be having those conversations. I'm going to very quickly show you what it will look like on your end when you're participating in a discussion forum.
I'm the instructor in this course, so I'm going to scroll down, find the forum that I want to participate in, click on it. You'll see that my prompt is up here at the top. So for an introductions forum, I would always post my own introduction response. And I have 2 choices here. If I want to post quickly, I can reply just right here in this box, but you'll see that I have no text formatting options. So what I like to do is click on Use Advanced Editor and Additional Options. And you'll see that that gives me the full Moodle text box. So I'll post my response. And if I want to attach a file, I can. And then I will click Post to Forum. And you'll see that my response shows up right there. Someone else can come in and either reply to the post that I just put up or reply to my initial post.
Finally, let's talk about assessing discussion forums. I do recommend grading forums, especially if you want students to participate in them, with the exception being, of course, if you want something that is truly, truly low stakes, or is just a place for students to ask questions of you or of each other. In thinking about your criteria for assessing forum participation, what's most important is that you clearly state expectations for students. So having a simple rubric and telling them what you're looking for will go a long way in helping you to then later grade those forums and also having students understand what your expectations are. So share these expectations with your students. Think about giving them an example of a really high quality discussion forum post if that's something you can create on your own, or over time you could ask students for permission to share examples. And think about requiring interaction. So the standard language that I use is post your own response by this date and time and reply to at least one classmate by this date and time. You could ask students to reply to multiple classmates. That can be part of your rubric. It's really easy to assess that. You can look at if students have replied to each other, but you'll also want to think about modeling for them or giving them some instructions about what you want those replies to look like. I always tell students saying something like, "Great post," does not count as a reply. So these are substantial replies and substantial engagement with, asking students to engage with each other. But if you don't require interaction, you might not get it. So I do suggest including that as part of your rubric. Here's a quick example of a discussion forum rubric, and you can download this along with others in our Moodle resources site. You'll see that a lot of these are pretty easy to assess because they're very objective. So timeliness, for example, were your posts submitted on time? Using the readings or resources that were referenced. So is it clear from your post with direct reference to the text that you have read or engaged with the materials provided? Interaction with classmates. This is very easy to assess. Have you replied to a student or whatever the sort of minimum reply criteria is? And then this one, quality of reasoning, this is where I use my judgment to really look at how students have engaged with the questions and with each other in the forum. But what's most important is that students know what you are assessing them on. Hopefully this gives you a good overview of discussion forums. For more questions or help, please send us an email at moodlehelp@berkshirecc.edu.